Hey, folks.
Hey, Ross.
Brian, it must be what, 11 o'clock where you are? 12?
Yeah, it's 11 o'clock. It's getting late.
About to say. Yeah. Charles,
Yeah.
how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Where are you, Ross?
South Alabama.
Oh,
sort
you're
of
the one
between
moving to
calls.
Cincinnati.
Indeed. Within probably 2-3 weeks. So we're having the house closing chaos ensue.
I've been amazed at how many people have been taking how many churches and folks have been moving calls during COVID. I thought it would slow way down, but it doesn't appear to have.
Yeah, it was a different process, I would certainly acknowledge, but just as fast or slow as the process normally is, from what I can tell.
Right.
And I'm excited about it. It's going to be a good move for us, although the longest move we've ever made. And this time we have at least one sentient being with us who is cognizant of the move. We have a 5-year-old and a 17-month-old. So we'll see how the transition goes.
Looks like Ross is frozen in South Alabama.
Now, 1, 2, 3.
There we go.
You're back.
You're back.
Good. Oh, I know what's going on. My son is watching Netflix downstairs.
Well, I'm just here to make things work if they need to be worked, but I don't need to really participate or be part of it if not necessary. So y'all feel free to talk. I have the class composite photo. If you guys get bored and can't think of what else to talk about, I can share that screen. But just y'all know each other, so just go ahead.
Yeah. So, Brian, you're in a research position right now, yes?
Yeah. It's actually coming to an end this fall. So trying to figure out what, speaking of fun moves, not looking forward exactly to doing this again.
Yeah. Well, how has the transition been into that sort of position and across the pond?
Yeah, it was good. The position's great. I mean, it's a unique thing. They basically it's a center here for Anglican studies. It's part of the Department of Theology and Religion. They raised enough money to kind of endow this thing and support a fellowship in Christianity in the armed forces. So it's basically looking at all kinds of different, just kind of relationships between the military and Christianity as a whole. It was perfect for me. It allowed me to continue to work on what I was, which was kind of theology and moral injury and veteran trauma. But it has a really neat network of clergy and chaplains and a lot of kind of connections far outside the university, which was kind of fun. It's not just sitting in a kind of ivory tower. You actually get out and do some things that seem like they actually make an impact beyond just the academy. So it's been a lot of fun. It was particularly pre-COVID, I should say. After that, we went into no joke lockdown here, and that became significantly less fun.
I would imagine so.
What city are you in?
What's that?
What city are you in?
Durham, in the northeast corner of England. Yeah.
It's not one of the major ones. I don't know it.
No, it's kind of the third university after Oxford and Cambridge. Okay. There's kind of those two are at the top, and then there's kind of a gap, and then somewhere under there, there's Durham kind of leading the next group.
University of London, any credit?
No, there's several in London, but yeah, it's pretty much as far as you can go north and still be in England.
I've been to well, I would say all over England, but I haven't been to Durham or heard of it. So clearly I haven't been all over, but I've been around England and been to Scotland. So I had a lot of fun in Scotland.
Yeah. It's been, we've enjoyed being able to drive up there, and like I said, it's been a few months now, but I take that back. We got to Edinburgh they briefly opened things up here over the summer where we could travel again.
Yeah.
But no, it's been a blast. Yeah. But
Did you turn off the Netflix, Ross?
yeah, say crushing my dreams of fast internet, Ross. I'm counting on that when I get back stateside. It's pretty rough out in the English countryside here.
Yeah. I gotcha. Mm-mm. So, William, what are you up to these days?
Well, I'm a senior financial analyst. So
Awesome.
I don't want to say I couldn't get ordained, because I think I probably could have done some kind of like online thing. But for all of my contacts, everyone in my network that I asked about it, they just laughed at me. I don't know if that was just because I'm technically like non-denominational and, you know, went to a Presbyterian school and was asking a Methodist guy about it. So there was a handful of hurdles there. And, but my friend had a job, and got a job with him, and which I already had my MBA at that point. So I just had to kind of learn Excel and learn kind of what that business did. So it's pretty boring, pretty awful.
I think Excel actually makes the world go round in a lot of ways. It's a lot of yes.
Zach, what are you up to?
I am back where I grew up in Lincoln. I have 3 kids. One is downstairs at dance class right now. So if it starts to cut out, that's why, because we're fighting over it. Serving a church outside of Lincoln, Nebraska. Lincoln's the capital. After seminary, I did 1 year of CPE. So did that for a year in Omaha. Then went to Missouri for almost 6 years, and then came back here because we need to be closer to family, as we were having our 3rd child and didn't really have anyone there to help us out. So that's what we're doing.
Yep.
Shave the head because for so many reasons. So yeah.
Well, if we would have done this about a week ago, my hair was down to about here.
Oh, nice.
So it was, luckily it was my decision to cut it, but it was just in the way. And I was wearing it back in a ponytail so much that it just didn't make sense to have it that long. I mean, to have, I don't know, the showers didn't necessarily take that much longer, but like to have to stand there and blow dry it, that's just not my cup of tea. And it just got to be too much. And like, I have a cat, and she's kind of long hair, and so her hair is everywhere, and with my hair everywhere, I just couldn't handle it anymore. So
Too much hair.
it was a lot of hair.
When I was in junior high, I had hair down to my shoulders as well. So it's I feel the pain rushing back into my memory.
It cost me a little over $100 to get it cut. I went to one place that I thought that I trusted to cut it. And so I've combed my hair this way my entire life. And she cut it, and she spent probably 20-ish minutes blow drying and putting product in it and trying to comb it this way because I have a cowlick in the back. And so she was trying to make the front match the back. And I was just like, you're telling me I've combed my hair the wrong way my entire life? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And so I got home and washed it and just instantly knew that it was not right. And so I paid her, obviously, and then went somewhere else for him to clean it up a bit. So I think that's probably one of the most expensive hair lessons I've ever learned. Yeah.
It looks good. It looks good.
Well, thank you.
I think it looks good too, by the way.
Well, thank you. William, you spent more on your hair on the last haircut than I have in like 5 years. So you can see that right now.
Well, I want my money back. So I'm going to invest in the suck cut. So
there you go. Yeah.
Which I have clippers. I've cut my hair before. The only reason I didn't do it myself was just because it was so long that I just didn't fully trust that I could. I knew I could do the back and sides, but kind of getting the top and the back, and I don't know. I just thought for the first time in years, I'll have somebody else do it. So.
You never know what you're gonna get when you go out there. Sometimes it'll be good, and sometimes it's not. But now you know, I guess. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when my hair's short, it's like kind of wavy, but when it was long, it just weighed itself down and it was significantly straighter. And so no matter what I ever tell anyone, they just don't believe me. You know, I'm like, hey, my hair's wavy and curly. And they're like, no, it's not. You know, sure. You know what you're doing. You're a professional.
Yeah.
So William, I imagine, COVID has changed the financial analyst world in some ways, but it probably hasn't changed like the working patterns. A lot of that stuff could have been remote work anyway. I'm just curious what your experience has been.
Yeah. So when I was in the office, then the work was exactly the same. But if I send somebody an email and they don't answer me, then I'll go walk into their office and sit down until they talk to me.
Yeah.
And now they don't respond to email. They don't call me back. They don't answer their phone. So I'm just kind of like, shouldn't be any surprise to anyone that this is late, but they still act surprised. I'm just like, I don't know. When I was in undergrad, my professor told us that he would treat us like adults until we proved that we needed to be treated otherwise. I think that's a pretty good philosophy. And I guess I should have realized that these people needed to be treated like children a long time ago. Treating someone like a child versus treating them like you're some kind of adolescent teen girlfriend waiting outside, homeroom every morning going, please talk to me, please love me. Like, it's not my work style. If you tell me you're going to get with me, I assume you're an adult and you're going to email me back when you have time. And They don't. And it's my fault that they don't. But,
Yeah, it sounds like those challenges sound familiar. So I think a lot translates from the business world to the ecclesial world.
Yeah. So, well, some dead guy wrote my book too. So.
Well said. Well said. So, Brian, I'm curious, and I'll admit I have not read your book, although I have it on my shelf. In your research, were you able to review the materials and documentation that the military itself puts out about like PTSD and moral injury? I mean, I know they have like some guidebooks and pamphlets.
Yeah. Sorry, cutting out there on the end, but I think I got the gist of that. Yeah. It's weird. So the VA does put a lot out about it. And, there's, the military has a vested interest in kind of walking a pretty narrow line on this. That they recognize that it is something that people deal with all the time. Recognize that it was particularly in soldiers of the last couple of wars have come back with a lot of trauma. And so post-traumatic stress in terms of PTSD is something they will kind of put out information on and put out treatment on because it's an official diagnosis in the DSM-5 of psychiatric disorders. And so if you go to the VA and you have it, they will, they know what to do with that. They treat it in a certain way according to psychiatry and other, psychological procedures. But the critical aspect of moral injury is something that is kind of invisible in a lot of ways in terms of literature that the military puts out, and the VA's only just started in the last few years to put things out about moral aspects of trauma. There was a big fight about whether it would or wouldn't be included in the last DSM-5, and it was ultimately not included. And essentially the VA and the DoD torpedoed it being put as a diagnosis in the DSM-5, largely because they don't know what to do with it. They don't have treatment for it. And if suddenly everybody was diagnosed with it, then it would be essentially writing a blank check
Wow.
for that kind of treatment. So, I mean, that's good and bad. It's bad in that it doesn't give a lot of people suffering from it a particular name for what they're going through. It's good, however, in that it also doesn't tie them down to a certain kind of programmatic treatment that doesn't really work on this kind of thing anyway. So it's kind of a weird, there's a weird space in that they can't, at the same time, they obviously can't acknowledge it too much because the baseline truth is that going to war and killing people inherently is kind of traumatic. Big shocker. But for them to admit that obviously is not exactly a Arlington recruiting ground moment. So
Yeah.
it's weird. There's a lot of great research everywhere, kind of except the military. And they read it. And I know talking to chaplains and other folks inside it, both in the UK and the US, they all know it's there and kind of check it out, but there's just not an official party line on it. But job security for me.
I appreciate those thoughts. Part of me probably assumes that the church has a leadership role in helping folks name that in the way that you've named it. That it's an injury that we have to take seriously, and pastors and other caregivers can walk alongside those who are suffering from those injuries in ways maybe that need to be modeled more.
Yeah, no, I think that's certainly what I'm contending kind of in all of what I do, is that this is a job for the church and the Christian community. It's weird though. I mean, it's harder than people think. I'm working with this group that's training clergy in England and Scotland to kind of be more what they call veteran friendly, or kind of set up programs to treat it. And a lot of it is kind of, if you really want to do this, you have to be prepared to listen to some really horrible stuff. And to the point where I don't think people realize what, if somebody says, I feel really horrible about this stuff that happened over there, and if you really want to say, okay, tell me about it, then okay, but
yeah, I didn't think that they were very open about talking about it for some reason. I mean, maybe once they reach the point that they realize they need help, they're more open to talking about it. But for some reason, I thought that there was kind of I don't know if it was just understood, or maybe it's a lack of understanding from a normal civilian, that when they open up about it, we just can't comprehend what it's like.
Yeah, so I think certainly most aren't gonna, just advertise freely what's going on. It's obviously pretty personal and intensely, what's the right word? I mean, you don't easily talk about traumas, I suppose, as general rule of thumb applies there as well. But I think one of the things that we're seeing is the more psychiatry and a lot of the psychologists who are working on it will kind of admit that they don't really have the vocabulary to deal with some of these issues of guilt and shame and those kind of things. That vocabulary actually is religious and kind of always has been. And that the church actually has, I mean, it's the purview of religion in many ways, talk about redemption and reconciliation and atonement and all those kind of things that are in this realm. So I think it's also natural for people to seek out those kind of places.
Is there any statistical difference in, I don't know, level of trauma in a Christian versus a non-Christian?
So I haven't seen it in terms of Christianity specifically. There is some evidence that folks with kind of almost a sweet spot of religious background are less susceptible to the worst parts and the kind of the worst aspects of trauma. But it's weird. I don't think it works out the way most people think. For example, if you have a really ingrained, if you have a really rigid, I should say, understanding of things and a really kind of rigid morality, and that comes from being a really devoted Christian in a certain circle for your whole life leading up to that, it actually can be more traumatic, because when things don't go along the way you think, or you've been trained to think this is such a unequivocally wrong action and you end up taking it, then it can be really devastating. Whereas some people who don't have that same kind of religious sense of guilt that becomes even more suffocating. So
I wouldn't imagine the first
vague.
group would join the military, though.
What's that?
I wouldn't imagine the first group would join the military. And if you're super rigid on thou shalt not kill, military might not be for you.
Well, it's not. Yeah, I think it's not just that. I think though if you have a lot of people that are really religious, a lot of people do join the military they come from a very religious background. It's not, and you see that in American society today. Certain conservative, Christian circles are very. I mean, a pathway goes straight from high school to the military. That's just a way of life. And so I think in those places it becomes, what I think everybody realizes is they're used to being that religious community gives them the sense that they are a good person. And I think that gives them a sense of value. And then so they've always gotten used to kind of seeing themselves that way. And when they go through something really traumatic and they kind of reap a certain amount of guilt about this wasn't the way it was supposed to be, or shame for this wasn't what we were supposed to do kind of thing, it breaks them because they've never been on that side of things before, and they don't have a place to put that, or a framework in which to make sense of that.
So is there, like you mentioned, atonement. So if they feel like they've broken some tenet of their understanding of Christianity, then is that part of what you look into to offer them, like a way to atone for it?
Yeah, I think, I don't know that I'd use that word in terms of what I'd ask them to do. I think the best thing the church offers is, honestly, I think, is the practice of lament, and the idea that because I think what they'll need to do is witness to that, but they have to be comfortable enough to do that, knowing they're not going to be judged additionally by the church community, which is obviously going to prevent a lot of people from going to those kind of things if they see it that way. So it's a really fine line for the church to walk, which is why, like I said, I think it's a good thing that groups like this one I'm affiliated with are actually putting together specific training packages for clergy and churches interested in kind of trying to take that step and be open to this, whether they're in military communities or whatnot. But I think just the idea that you're welcome here and we'll work as a community to do what we can to help recognize our own complicity in this, walk this kind of road with you. And I think just offer that sense that I think first is just always that they're not outside of, they haven't done something that puts themselves outside of, the Christian tradition, outside of the church, which sounds simple. And I'm sure all of us,
Well, I don't know. For me personally, it's never been difficult for me to see myself as outside of God's love. So I could see how someone else, or someone in that situation, it would be difficult for them to accept that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I think with people who experience moral injury in kind of an extreme and acute sense of guilt and shame and all those emotions, I don't know. I always walk this fine line between saying, yes, is this something that applies in all kinds of places in the world? Sure. Does it apply in the same way it does to somebody who, killed a whole lot of people and feels really bad about it? Well, no, probably not.
That's
they
what I was
experience.
asking, Brian, is that like, in my former church now, we had an old men's group that gets together and has pancakes once a week, right? This kind of group. And there's at least 3 Vietnam veterans around that table, and 2 of them very proud about their service. They're very much come from the conservative Christian background, and the way of life, God and country sort of folks, and love those men deeply. But there's one gentleman who has questions about why we were there in the first place, and clearly interprets his role in that affair differently than the other 2. And so I'm sitting there as a pastor trying to honor 3 different personal interpretations of what the efficacy of that war was, and wildly divergent views, which are not, there's no middle ground in that.
Yeah.
And so I would appreciate some sort of guidance as a clergy member in how to listen to both sides of those stories and everything in between, quite frankly, because it seems very difficult to navigate in a way that actually doesn't upset the 2 on one side.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. This kind of thing comes up particularly in Vietnam. Obviously, every conflict's different, but yeah, I mean, does if there's does it cause active conflict, I would say, at the breakfast or anything? Yeah. Yeah, I always think it's best if you can isolate a group in that case and say, let's talk as veterans. I mean, you just get the 3 of them in a space, and have them and ask them to talk about their experiences of it, and what the conflict was. And I mean, this is the way they treat moral injury in other groups, in VAs and chaplains and chaplaincy centers. What they'll do is it's modeled a lot on Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, on AA meetings, where people get up and they'll have some, them share, and they'll say, okay, stand, and the rule is, somebody shares and that's all you say. Nobody says anything affirming. Nobody says anything condemning. It's just you share, and it's a non-judgmental kind of space. And then kind of conversations, I think the idea is afterwards would probably develop in the way they do in AA meetings and those kind of things too. But I think in that situation, I'm also willing to bet that those 3 men have vastly different experiences of the conflict as a whole. And their levels of participation, I'm guessing, were vastly different. Because that's kind of the way it is.
And this dialogue had been going on for at least 8 or 9 months before I arrived. So they had presumably had these sort of conversations before, and I found myself in the middle of it, all
Yeah.
of a sudden.
Yeah, but it's weird though. I think you'd be surprised how many people aren't just going to naturally say, "Here's what my experience was." So if you sit everybody down and say just the same kind of rules, nobody says anything, just sit there and share what your experience of the conflict was and what it means to you, or some kind of framing question like that. Because I tend to think those people who experience it one way, and I don't want to pass all kinds of judgment, but I'm guessing the two that are a little bit more patriotic on their sleeve about it didn't probably have to do or see some of the things that the third guy did. And if they're having an issue with it, I almost guarantee that, because nobody who's, in general, in my experience, who's been on the really rough side of it and has really seen those kind of things would judge somebody for their views on it afterwards. My experience, those that do kind of have a brotherhood of, you can think what you want about it afterwards, and that's entirely your purview, and they'll never really question it.
Yeah. That's helpful.
And then hearing him, just being able to having to sit there and witness to the one guy who, if he's willing to share, some of what's really weighs on him about it, I'm guessing they'd at least have a moment, especially if it's in the silence, where they at least have to confront something about it. Yeah, boy, I can only imagine. I feel like the U.S. I'm sure has changed in the last 2.5 years that I've been away so much that I don't think those things are getting better.
Ross said you had a book. Is that on Amazon?
Yeah, it is actually. It's called Full Darkness.
Full of Darkness?
No, Full Darkness. Yeah. It wasn't my idea, but it turned out to be a cool title, I think. Yeah, it should be still there. It's not their number one bestseller or anything, but yeah, I think I still owe. I got a letter from Erdman's yesterday. I think I still owe them $280 because they did the indexing work on the book for me. Yeah. Things you live and learn.
Yeah. I have an idea for an accounting website. I don't know how much accounting you know, but
more since we moved here, unfortunately.
So like I know there's some weird words that aren't in normal math, like accrual and deferral and debit and credit even, but for the vast majority, most of accounting is just pretty simple math.
Yeah.
And so but when you learn math, then you learn addition, right? And they say, what's 1 + 2? What's 2 + 2? What's 2 + 3? What's 2 + 4? And so you get all this repetition in. But when you learn accounting, then they say, if your liabilities this and your stockholder equities that must mean your assets are what? And that's only one question, or regardless of what the question is, it's just like, how do you come up with what the debit should be or the credit should be in this particular scenario? But there's not the repetition. And so I would really like to come up with a website that just has a random number generator and says, click, let me practice. And you get a couple of new numbers. And so like, I think I can actually build that out myself, but I really want to have like usernames and passwords so that people can like log in and pick back up where they left off, and maybe even have like a credit card monthly payment kind of set up. But I have no idea how to do that stuff. So I think that's going to be a live and learn and pay someone else to do it.
Yeah, that would be worth paying the experts to help with. Yeah. That would be cool. Yeah, I know we were pretty good about those kind of things before coming here, but we were fortunate enough to get with my wife's job over here to get them as part of her contract to pay for international kind of tax agency to put together our taxes, which was great because it's an absolute nightmare we sold a house in the US after we'd moved here, and just as you can probably imagine, the tax headache of figuring out how that works into taxes overseas versus credit and US taxes versus all that is
I mean, TurboTax doesn't do that for you?
no, yeah, no, you'd be surprised. There's no real easy sheet for expats, believe it or not. So, yeah.
Well,
If anybody's got the expat dream, thinking this is just lives the sweet life on a French beach or something, that's not exactly. If you're an American citizen, that's not going to be the way it is. Uncle Sam's going to keep coming for you no matter where you are.
I would love to live and work overseas, but
Yeah,
I just can't. I've applied for a bunch of stuff and they never even call me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't. No dream hating for me. It's definitely kind of fun, but yeah, you'd be far better knowing. I'm sure what you do.
I don't know that much of it. Like it was a really weird program. I don't remember undergrad being like this, but I wasn't in any kind of like super advanced undergrad program to begin with. But like there was definitely a couple of kids in the class that like really understood accounting and they would get really good grades. But then like the rest of the class would get like 50s on the test. And you just made 50s the whole time, only understanding half of it. And then you'd get a B in the class.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and so like so I've taken enough accounting now to where I can sit for the CPA exam, and I've gone through all the study stuff for the CPA. And like even people that pass the CPA, they're just like, I wasn't confident going in. Like I went in and just, I mean, obviously they didn't guess on everything, but you know, it's just like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. And then you just get your score and you pass. And magically, I mean, obviously there's not just one test for it, but you know, you do that enough and eventually they give you a piece of paper that says you're a CPA. So
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot of bad CPAs out there. Just because somebody has some letters next to their name doesn't mean they know what they're doing. But,
Gosh. Yeah, that's confidence building. Yeah, well, I'm yeah. So now I guess I've got fingers crossed that now that they've got our massive tax return from last year, it's funny. I had to mail the thing back from over here because it took them so long to compile it. By the time they'd gotten it ready after multiple extensions, they'd actually closed the website, so I couldn't send it in. So I had to physically mail the like 146 page tax return back to Texas.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good time. So, and the good news is, oh yeah, I got 6 weeks to figure that out myself this time around. So yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. But anyway,
Well,
CPA is very valuable. It is a calling.
Allegedly. The weird thing about it is like the real key to a CPA is basically being a good looking person with a good personality, and you just happen to be really smart. And so when you're an undergrad, part of the program, in order to graduate with your bachelor's, you have to do at least one internship. And so if you ever like just randomly go on to a CPA website and look at the pictures, the headshots of everyone that works there, and they look identical. So basically, if you don't look like they look, you're not getting on at that firm. And so if you can get the internship and basically leverage that into getting hired, and you can work at a Big Four, then like life kind of starts to open up for you after a while. But like that whole process like terrifies most people, and they end up hating it. And so it's like, unless you really want to be a CFO, then like it's not worth it. And I mean, you can look up stuff like how much more money does a CPA make? And you might get some skewed stuff because if you're in New York, they're going to get paid a lot more because everybody gets paid more in New York or San Francisco or wherever. But like the normal person, you're not going to make enough you're not going to make so much more money that it's worth putting up with all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, to steer the conversation in a drastically different direction, I was doing, I was doing some stalking, I guess we'll call it, and I was trying to look up Belle Keane, and I knew she didn't have any social media while we were in school, but I found I guess public record and different stuff, and so I know she got married, but then I also saw that she passed away, and so I did not see any information on how. I tried to continue my stalking and milk Mark Holtz for information. I think they're in the same presbytery, and he wasn't quite willing to ask the horrible question that I was willing to ask. But he basically said that if it's not public, then it's not good. So,
what was the name again, William?
Belle Keane.
That's not ringing a bell for me for some reason.
I don't know. She was from Florida. I definitely had some classes with her, and she rarely came to class. Sorry, you're cutting out.
Yeah, I just not heard anything about it at all. So
I hadn't either until I looked it up. And say the only people that I hear from are James McKinstry, and occasionally then I'll talk to Arlo. That's about it. Well, I take that back. I've had a couple of conversations with Sarah Vanderzee.
yeah, Sarah's been doing some neat stuff as well. So, oh, there's Scott Hill. I wonder if Scott can hear us. Maybe not.
So I've never used Zoom before. Is there a way to mess with the background? I thought you could put like a fake background behind you.
There is. Charles should weigh in. He knows how to do it. See?
Oh yeah, I always have fake backgrounds on. Most of the time, oh, where are they? I have I've been writing a lot, so I often have a mountaintop road on the background.
Oh, that one's nice.
Yeah. So that's not part of Zoom. That's like a picture on your computer.
Well, you have virtual backgrounds, and Zoom puts in a few standard ones like the Golden Gate Bridge, and then you can upload your own. So we use Teams internally a lot, so most of my really good backgrounds are in there. Yeah, it's you can put anything back in there. We had a Christmas party where you were supposed to wear your strange. Yeah, you can mess with. You can also put faces on and things like that, animations. Instead of doing an ugly Christmas sweater, we got the we did terrible Christmas background. So I found like the Star Trek Enterprise crew with Christmas sweaters on.
Awesome.
So like you can do this where you look like a dog talking or like a pig talking. So there are all kinds of fake strange things you can do.
Choose virtual background. I don't have a green screen, so it says none. And even the video filters, your machine does not support this. I have an old Mac.
Yeah.
Well, that
For
I
Zoom.
can't help you with. But
For Zoom, you have to have, I think, in the 4 or 5 years or so.
Yeah.
It's got to be that old. Teams will do it either way, but Zoom, you have to have a somewhat newer processor because I have the same issue.
Oh, first world problems.
Yeah.
So
Or you just have
Zach-
a green screen.
Zach, you said you were wrestling kids. How many kids do you have now?
I've got 3 girls, 6, 3, and 7 months.
Wow. Wonderful,
Yes.
wonderful.
And everyone is now home. So if you hear noise in the background, it's one of the 5 of us. Probably not me though. So one of the 4 of them. So yeah, it's
That's right. Chaos
adventure.
ensues.
yes, yeah. Especially now that the youngest one is in the pterodactyl phase, where she just screams randomly as high as she can, just because she can. So
Pterodactyl. That's
always a fun time.
extremely accurate.
Let me know when they stop because I haven't hit that part yet.
Yeah. In fact, here's one here. This is my oldest. This is Samira. She was just at dance downstairs. So
Yeah.
say hi.
Hello. Mm-mm.
So yeah, we're just
How did y'all's school system navigate COVID?
So in Lincoln, they did. Luckily, we weren't. My wife's a special ed coordinator at a middle school, so she was impacted. Our other kids weren't in school yet, so they were just at home. But in Lincoln, it was like from March on, everything was online, and they just got through that as best as they could. And then this year, students had the option to either go online or in person, but masks were mandatory if you were in person. And so far, the schools have not had a big issue with transmission within the schools, so that's been good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of doing what we can, and kids preschool has been open, and our 3-year-old has learned how to wear a mask. So, and then we wear masks at home because we have so many people coming from different areas that we have 2 school systems, or 2 schools, and then a preschool, and then wherever I go, we wear masks at home so we don't spread it amongst each other.
Bravo. Yeah.
It's been interesting to watch how different areas of the country respond or don't respond to health. Nothing seems to have ever changed, even from the very beginning. Businesses were always open. They shut down for maybe 2 weeks, and the governor caught a lot of flack for it and opened things back up again. So it's been challenging to wade those waters from because there are that many different opinions in the congregation as well. We've got business leaders and folks who want things to keep cranking along. Then you've got profession who are in their 60s and 70s who are wanted to shut everything down immediately. And again, how do you navigate the conversations that need to happen in terms of not only caring for people but also making sure that people are safe and listening to one another. It's a challenge I was not able to do very well, quite frankly.
How did you guys do for church, Ross? Did you
Yeah.
guys?
So we um uh so in I decision making.
Your audio is pretty rough there, Ross.
So I'm whether
If you turn your video off, sometimes folks can hear you better.
all right, can you all hear me now? Wait,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can hear you all. Okay, there we go. My wife turned off Netflix downstairs, so maybe it'll be a little better. Bandwidth woes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was the only person really pushing for us to have some sort of guidance that's not just like the whims of whoever happens to be in the session meeting that day. And I was never able to get that accomplished. So we sat down for, I think, 2.5 months, probably starting in April, started doing everything online, kind of pre-producing worship during the week and releasing it on Sunday. And then all while that was happening, I was securing, I'm also the IT department at our church as well. So I was doing a lot of research about what kind of cameras to get and what kind of equipment you need to do from the sanctuary, and doing hybrid worship. So folks are allowed to come to the sanctuary if they choose to, and we've had 35 people still choosing to do that. But the sanctuary is built for 400, so we could socially distance that number of people, thankfully. So if it were to go well beyond that, where we couldn't socially distance, I think I would have to push some more. But and all while this was happening, I was also searching for a new call. So they've, lots of different things weighing on all the leadership's mind. But it was fun to try to walk that line faithfully with folks who want to shut down and folks who desperately want to, connect with their church community, their faith community. I get that as well. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch from over here, at least, because it seems like all those choices are getting pushed down to people like in the churches and the presbyteries and so many individual spaces, where here it's just, okay, nope. Go. Prime Minister says everything's shut down. Parliament says no. Everybody does it this way. And it, I can, see a lot of people in the States that wouldn't be able to deal with that kind of thing, or would have, ask legitimate questions about that, I should say. But at the same time, you can see it's okay. Well, there's somebody making the decision, and then everybody else can at least, figure out how they can be faithful around that and not have to navigate kind of that open question of just like, it's on you guys, figure it out.
Yeah, I was. I tried to, look around the country to see like how presbyteries were guiding their member churches, and some presbyteries offered strong guidance about, it is unsafe for you to gather. You should strongly consider not doing it. And if our presbytery, for example, had language like that I could.
Netflix is back on.
Oh no! Oh, sorry. Anyway, Zach, I saw you shaking your head. What did your presbytery do?
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And even when pastors asked for any sort of guidance, I mean, it wasn't even guidance. It was just pastors asking for like, will you give us something we can pass down to our churches saying it's not safe? I mean, I can take her. I was diagnosed with lupus in 2014, and I've been on immune suppressing drugs ever since then. So for me, this has been a little more of a sensitive issue. And so as soon as things started to spread in Nebraska and Lincoln and Omaha, and I started thinking, okay, well, we probably shouldn't have coffee hour, or we shouldn't have snacks for coffee hour. We shouldn't have coffee hour. Like I started going through the list. And I'm like, I don't even know if it's safe for us to meet and worship at this point. We have nothing to do. And so like on a Thursday, I just said, okay, we're not going to have worship. Here's what we're going to do. I'll record something and put it online and then figure it out from there. And then, so we were out for like 2.5 months. They went back for about a month and a half. And then we had to close down again because numbers jumped. And then we just went back on Ash Wednesday, but we have about 20 to 25 who show up all masked. And yeah, I mean, so I was doing a lot of it out of my basement for a while, recording in my office, the worship service. Yeah. And then we started doing it in the sanctuary at Advent time. So, but yeah, I mean, we've it's kind of the interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's just we wanted the presbytery to say something. Multiple churches wanted the presbytery, asked for the presbytery to say something. We have an interim EP, which has not helped. In fact, Ross, I don't even know. I mean, I think he worked in the Alabama area for a while, but and then was in South Carolina maybe for some time. So, yeah, I mean, no one really wanted to say anything, and so they didn't, and so it was kind of up to each church. And Lincoln was in a really interesting spot too, because Lincoln's health department was actually established before the state health department was.
Oh,
And
wow.
so the county that we're in was actually exempt from whatever the governor said counties had to do. So we had this kind of interesting standoff between the governor of Lincoln, who actually then had say over the whole county as to what was going to be done, versus the governor, who were both in Lincoln. No, sorry, the mayor of Lincoln versus the governor.
Governor of Alaska.
They both live in Lincoln, but the governor could not tell the mayor what our county was supposed to do. And so for a long time, we had the rest of the state was opening up while Lincoln was still shut down. And hi, honey, yeah. And so it was really interesting, but we have seen, I mean, there's been a large difference between Lincoln and Omaha, which are the two large municipalities, and then everywhere else. Just how serious it is has been interesting. The medical center is in Omaha, and so they've taken it very seriously. Lincoln is where the university is at. Yeah, I know. You want this? And so they've taken it fairly seriously, but then I serve a church that's about 40 minutes outside of Lincoln, and their viewpoint on it has been very different than mine.
Yeah.
And so that's been an added dynamic to kind of work through, is trying to find that balance of my health, the health of my family, how serious where we live is taking it versus how non-serious they were taking it for a long time at where I was serving. And then the presbytery not wanting to do anything. At one point, our EP said, I will have something out to the churches by Friday, and this was Thursday. And nothing ever got written or sent out.
Oh, right. That's bad. Yeah. That's bad.
Yeah, I mean, nothing ever got sent out. And so pastors are pretty frustrated about that. But yes, I mean, it would have been, this is like, I think one of the few times where we had a lot of pastors wishing we were like Methodist or something, to where the bishop just could have said, "Nope,
Yes,
done."
I would have loved
You're-
that.
And we would have been like, great, because I just got tired of having the discussion like every month or every 2 months. How are the numbers doing? Are we ready to come back yet? Yeah, like it just got annoying. It just, that conversation over and over again just got super annoying for me, at least. I know, right? Are you hungry? I'm sorry. I'm gonna mute myself now.
Pterodactyl phase. Pterodactyl phase. Yeah, I think it's been a complex thing, and having your mayor and your governor at odds sounds like it made it even more complex. Well, folks, I got to run. It's dinner time here, and I'm going to go help my wife manage these kids. So I enjoyed connecting again, and look forward to tomorrow as well. So maybe I'll see you all on some of the other Zooms.
Yeah, likewise. Likewise, Ross.
Yep.
Yeah,
Grace and
thanks, guys.
peace.
I gotta go.
See
I
y'all
gotta
later.
cook supper too. So
Yeah.
see you guys later.
Yeah.
Thanks for convening us, Charles. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. See you later.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.